أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Peace and blessings be upon you all, dear viewers. Welcome once again to Reverts World on Ahlul Bayt TV, the only channel which is broadcasting the pristine teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam exclusively in the language of English. Today, once again, I welcome to the show Sheikh Ahmed Hanif, who is a revert himself and has come once again, alhamdulillah, to discuss another topic very important for all of those who are either converting to Islam or Muslims already after having converted or reverted. So on behalf of our viewers, as always, I would like to welcome you to the show. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
As always, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. Our discussion today, our topic is advice for new reverts, and obviously that would encompass all of those who are considering converting to Islam or reverting to Islam as well. Family, first and foremost. Now, having conducted a lot of interviews with a lot of reverts, I'm hard-pressed to find many who have had problems with their family members, with their parents and so on and so forth. They've been, most of the time, quite blasé about it, you know, even when their parents are atheists. However, I am aware of the fact that some people do encounter problems, sometimes quite serious problems with family members, normally their parents, sometimes siblings, whoever the case may be. What advice can we give to such people?
Well, I think the first thing we need to know is that negative reactions by family members is something always, or most of the time, temporary. It is their way of reacting to a major change that someone they loved has done. And it makes them very insecure. Because you love somebody based upon certain characteristics that they have, who they are. When this person changes to Islam, they think that they don't know that person anymore. This is a new person. This is a different person. You see? And because of this, they reject it. You know, they attack it because they're afraid to lose the person. Basically, that's what reversion is. They think they're losing their son or their brother or their friend or what have you. The revert has to keep this in mind, right? And let them know that the person that he or she is not only the same lovable person that they were before, but even more complete in that direction, even more reliable, even more truthful, you know, even more honest, you know, even more kind, you know, even more self-sacrificing. And this is why, for example, you find that many pieces of advice in dealing with one's parents is to try to ignore their negative comments and their hostile reactions and show them more love and more respect, so that they would be able to get over this initial fear of losing that person.
Alhamdulillah, it's brilliant that we're doing a show like this, because I wish when I was reverting to Islam, I knew or understood what you're explaining now, because I remember for many years, actually we did a show once with a sister who converted to Islam, and when she told her parents, you know, her parents were quite shocked about it. I think her mum was quite religious from a Christian background. And her response was, it wasn't that negative, but it was, what did we do wrong?
Right.
That you would want to leave Christianity and become a Muslim. And probably what it actually was is, what did we do right, really?
Right, exactly.
Because obviously it must have had a lot to do with the upbringing, why the daughter decided to revert. But the reason why I say I wish I'd had this advice beforehand is because for many years I went through my life after becoming a Muslim, saying to people, you know, I became a Muslim and my life has changed so much. I used to do X, Y, and Z, which I did do. As we all used to do. Well, not all of us, but a lot of us used to do prior to Islam.
Right.
Until one day somebody said to me, "No, I don't believe you." And I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "I think that the way you are now and the way you were prior to becoming a Muslim hasn't really changed that much." And I had to sit back and think, maybe that's actually true to an extent. Sometimes we have this image of this kind of bipolar personality that before Islam, you were this son of Satan,
right,
doing X, Y, and Z. And all of a sudden you become a Muslim and you're the most angelic being on the face of this earth. When really and truly, the difference arguably hasn't changed that much. I mean, I hope I'm not saying anything blasphemous by saying that.
It's true. I think you have to look at it in two ways, right? I think we have to look at it from the point of view of our nature itself, our fitra, and from another point of view, from the point of view of superimpositions upon that fitra. What I mean is, and this reflects the type of friendships that you have. We have either true friends or false friends, okay? For example, a friend you have who is a drinking buddy, right? Or somebody who enjoys doing a certain particular type of activity with you. That's a false friend, really. And I'm not trying to put a value on it, a false friend. I mean, a friend who you have in the lab, who works with you in the lab, that's a false friend too. When I say by false, it means that friendship is not very deep. It is based upon something superficial that is not essential to your personality, And you'd find that friends like those tend to want to refuse to believe that you are now a good person. For example, you were his drinking buddy. He thinks that you, in essence, are a drinker. So when you change, he can't figure that out. He can't accept that. But on the other hand, you have, for example, people who are related to you in your essence, right? Certain aspects of your personality, who you are. Like your parents, for example, or your siblings. Their relationship with you is not a relationship based upon, certain things that you do together. It's based upon who you are and their relationship to that particular person. Well, these people have to know that you have not changed, really. That it is the same you, but an even better version. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much. In terms of interaction with Muslims, for a lot of us, when we, revert to Islam, it may be the first time that we're actually interacting on a more than a superficial level with Muslims, and sometimes we don't get it right in terms of there are certain unspoken etiquettes that need to be observed, and how are we supposed to go about that, so that we don't maybe do something that may be deemed offensive?
Well, I think we have to be patient with ourselves, really, because Islam is also a system of social codes and etiquettes and so on that we are new to, And we've also find that Muslim communities are very indulgent, very welcoming of reverts, okay, on a personal level. They might not provide for us on an organizational level or a community level, but on an individual level, they are quite welcoming and happy to see that you are a revert and you've come to Islam and so on. It's like somebody who learns a new language. The people who are the ahl, the people of that language, are very indulgent to the mistakes that a person would make when he's trying to converse with them in their language. I think the same thing a revert should bear in mind. He has to try to be among the Muslim community and to pick up in a kind of by osmosis, in that sense, the customs and habits of Muslims. There are elements out there who would want to take you as their student. You know what I mean? And tell you, well, I will teach you your Islam because you don't know, and so on. You have to be careful with those elements. Yes, listen to their advice and so forth and so on. But also know that it's a type of a personality type that seeks self-validation, in educating you in your Islam.
How far do we take it? This is probably a very bad example, but the other day I was walking, and behind me there was a sister, and the sister said to me, "Why are you limping?" And I was walking normally. Now, what I'm trying to say here is, it wasn't on purpose.
Right.
It's just the way I walk
Right.
from back in the day.
Right.
So sometimes the way I used to walk back in the day is still with me.
Right.
And sometimes I'm left with this dilemma of trying to figure out how much of the past should I leave behind. In other words, should I eradicate everything? I'm talking about behavior now, not the essence of who I was, but all of my behavioral tendencies of back in the day. Should I do away with everything in totality? And even though I may not change myself, but my whole personality, maybe when I'm walking, should I be walking very meekly in the earth, with an arched back looking down? I mean, I don't think, and this is why I said it was a bad example, I should be walking as if I've got a limp either, because it would give the wrong impression. But, where do we draw the line?
That's a very difficult thing for the new revert, because for you to be able to draw the line, you have to know well what is Islamic and what is not. Okay, what is a proper way of an Islamic walk, if there is such a thing as the way to walk in Islam, and there is such a thing, right? And what is not, what is contrary to that. What is allowed, even though it was not part of the Sunnah. We have to become aware of that. And I think that only comes with study and with growing awareness. So I think one thing that a revert has to do in order to be able to distinguish between his own culture and Islamic culture, is to be in the presence of other reverts, to be in touch with the scholars, to be able to read. Because Islam, one must know, is not against one's culture. Islam is about reforming one's culture. Those aspects of one's culture that is not threatening or antithetical to Islam, we keep, even though the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, didn't do it. And those aspects of our culture that are antithetical to Islam, we reject. But Islam is not about, and the revert should know this, is not about rejecting one's culture. Islam is not about wearing an Arabic dasha, because a Muslim is supposed to wear that. Islam is not about folding your pants above your ankles, because in the time of the Prophet, clothes that were dragging on the ground were considered to be arrogance. Islam is not about that. And there's a problem with other reverts is what we do is we tend to sort of like literally apply certain, modes of behavior and dress and so on to our environment without understanding the principles behind these modes of behavior. It's a very important thing, the principles behind these modes of behavior. So for example, a revert sister does not have to wear a black abaya with a niqab in order to express her Islamicity. Her clothing, as long as they reflect the principles of Islam and the limits that are allowed to be uncovered in Islam, she's dressed Islamic. With that type of attitude, you can interface quite well with your non-Muslim environment, in the sense that they do not see you as somebody strange, right? One thing the revert has to be very careful about is cultural interpretations of Islam being presented as the essence of Islam itself. So for example, in some Islamic environments, men and women just do not speak in public to each other. They just don't speak, right? But in our society, men and women speak in public, and there's nothing wrong in Islam for that, And so, for example, some people would want to impose these type of ideas upon us and have us walking around with a guilt complex and so forth and so on. I know one Sunni brother, he became Muslim. Somebody said from now on, you don't hug any woman, including your mother. So he stops hugging his mother, You know, so we have to be very careful about that. And I think one of the ways that we could become more sensitive to something like that is to befriend, speak with other reverts, and try as hard as possible to know our Islam better from books, from discussions with the great ulama and so on. And I think, you know, we'll be able to distinguish between these different nuances in terms of culture.
Inshallah. Thank you very much. Moving on to another area which I would like you to give advice to new reverts about, and this is with regards to the prayers, especially if the revert is coming from a Christian background. He or she would have been praying in the language, their mother tongue basically. In most cases on a show like this would be English. All of a sudden they revert to Islam, and now they're told you are to recite your prayers in a language which is alien to them, Arabic. It's not even like it's another European language which maybe has Latin, you know, as the basis of the structure of the language, where they could maybe pick up at least the odd words here and there, but you're speaking in a totally different language. You know, you've got issues with pronunciation, understanding, so on and so forth. How are they to overcome this?
Right. Well, I think first of all, we have to overcome it in how we understand or conceptualize this particular problem. In Christianity, and maybe the best example would not be Protestant Christianity, right, which is not the original Christianity, but more like Catholic Christianity or Eastern Orthodox Christianity, and to a certain extent even the Anglican Christianity. Prayer has two aspects. There's two sort of like forms of prayer. One is prayer as ritual, and the other one is prayer as supplication. Prayer as ritual is what we find in the Mass on Sunday. Okay? There are specific standings and sittings. There are specific readings. There are specific gestures. Okay? Because this is a ritual. And ritual are really basically outward types of behavior that are necessary for the creation of a particular spiritual type of environment. Okay? That's what a ritual is. An outward behavior that opens the door to the infusion of a spiritual environment. Okay? And then we have in Christianity personal supplication, meaning you're asking God for your own needs, you're pouring your heart out to God, and this is done in your own language. Now, ritual in Christianity originally was in the Latin language, right? Or maybe in the other Orthodox confessions, it would have been in Greek, okay, which were considered to be liturgical languages. That is, languages that are have an essential relationship to the ritual that is being practiced. You find ritual also being having the same general format in things like, for example, Hinduism. You know, where, for example, the Brahmin would speak in the Sanskrit language, even though the people who are participating, the lay people, didn't know that particular language. So language has also this ritual type of effect. In the Salah, when we say prayer in Islam, we usually tend to mean Salah. But Salah could be equivalent to, and is equivalent to, the ritual aspect of prayer, where we have certain bowings and standings and prostrations and a particular language. Okay? And this language and actions, prescribed actions, create that spiritual environment. Okay? It is at the end of the Salah, when the Salah ends, we now implore Allah in our own language. This is the prayer that these Christians or ex-Christians and so on are familiar with. Okay? So I think what the revert has to know is that the ritual of Salah is a special gift to Muslims. It is the ritual means whereby we approach the divine court and get the doors open to us. Just like, for example, if you want to go and see the Queen and want to go have lunch with her, you have to know the etiquette of how you eat at the table. Before that, you have to know how to enter the palace and where to sit and how to present yourself and what to wear and so forth and so on, which makes you much more appropriate to meet that particular monarch. With Islam, it's the same. For us to get to Allah, for us to get the door opened, for Allah to welcome us and to listen to our requests, we have to go through what we call protocol. And the language of Arabic, the bowings and so forth, these are the protocols by which we get an audience with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Fair enough. So in terms of actually learning, I mean, practically, how are we supposed to learn to recite this prayer, this prescribed prayer, this protocol that has been ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because for many people, many of us find it quite difficult to learn. And not just to learn it, because you can learn it. Normally it's learned for most people by the transliteration. The problem with that is you won't necessarily be pronouncing the Arabic correctly. The makhraj wouldn't be on point. So how do we do this?
Well, the revert should really try to learn it with someone who knows how to pronounce it properly. He shouldn't try to learn it on his own because he doesn't know the proper pronunciation of the different words. So he should try to learn it with somebody who knows it. And then he just has to practice. Now, it might be that certain pronunciations might be alien to his tongue, okay? But this is understandable, and that is acceptable by Allah. You know, for example, you know, some of the hypocrites used to criticize Hazrat Bilal, you know, that his seen sounded like a sheen, you know, and therefore they thought that he was not the best person to say the adhan.
The sheen sounded like this. His sheen
sounded like the scene. Or I
so
think
it's the other way around.
The scene sounded like the sheen.
Yes.
You know, and they thought that he was not appropriate, therefore, because of the fact that he could not pronounce this word, this letter properly as the mu'adhin. And the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, replied that Bilal's sheen, right, is much more beautiful than your scene. You see? So Allah accommodates for this. But the revert should, even though he should try his best to pronounce the words properly, and there would be no excuse for him if he has the capacity to do this, but he's negligent of it. What the revert should pay more of his concentration on is the fact that he's entering into the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very, very much. It's time for a break. When we come back, Sheikh Ahmed Hanif will continue to give us advice for those of us who are new to Islam. So please join us after this short break. Assalamu alaikum. Always, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you, thank you. Our discussion today, our topic is advice for new reverts, and obviously that would encompass all of those who are considering converting to Islam or reverting to Islam as well. Family, first and foremost. Now, having conducted a lot of interviews with a lot of reverts, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Peace and blessings be upon you all, dear viewers. Welcome once again to Reverts World on Ahlul Bayt TV, the only channel which is broadcasting the pristine teachings of the Ahlul Bayt. alayhim salam, exclusively in the language of. I'm hard pressed to find many who have had problems with their family members, with their parents, and so on and so forth. They've been most of the time quite blasé about it, you know, even when their parents are atheists. However, I am aware of the fact that some people do encounter problems, sometimes quite serious problems with family members, normally their parents, sometimes siblings, whoever the case may be. What advice can we give to such people?
Well, I think the first thing we need to know is that negative reactions by family members is something always, or most of the time, temporary. It is their way of reacting to a major change that someone they loved has done.
English. Today, once again, I welcome to the show Sheikh Ahmed Hanif, who is a revert himself and has come once again, alhamdulillah, to discuss another topic very important for all of those who are either converting to Islam or Muslims already after having converted or reverted. So on behalf of our viewers, as always, I would like to welcome him to the show. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.